What does it take for us to build workplaces and a world that is fit for the future? A question that plagues many a leader and many an organization. How do we learn from our experiences? Are we shaping ourselves and our workplaces to be fit for the future? What does it take to invest in people and nurture success? How do we ensure that our investments in diversity, equity, and inclusion are delivering to the intended goals? Are we seeing the very invisible responsibility that most employees carry, that of being caregivers? What does it take to build a caregiver friendly workplace? Are leaders caregivers? What can leaders and organizations learn from caregivers and their experiences? How do we create safe spaces that enable inclusion? Is this something that is holding, especially women, back from the C-suite? We are delighted to bring to you a series of conversations around the idea of building future-fit corporates. It is my absolute pleasure today to have my dear friend and colleague. Shantanu is currently the Senior Vice President of HR at Zydus Wellness. He's a passionate HR practitioner with 28 years of domain experience across the industry. He has held different roles across a portfolio of HR functions, including HR business partnering at leadership level, as well as being instrumental in driving and embedding corporate culture. Instrumental in driving turnarounds and seasoned experience in implementing HR initiatives across verticals and leading organizations through people excellence. What I find most fascinating about him is his ability to write, and his articles on management, people, and leadership have found many readers and appreciators, including myself. Shantanu is a trained Indian classical musician. I've had the delight of listening to him and plays the Indian classical guitar and has performed in several concerts across the world and partnered with well-accomplished musicians in many of the performances. I am so glad to have you here today, Shantanu. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm equally glad for two reasons. One is that the topic itself, but most important is that, as Bhavana has just alluded to, it's 28 years of association with Bhavana. So, it's whenever I talk to you, it is a very easy going because I don't have to prepare myself. And it's an absolute delight to have this conversation with Bhavana, who is herself a thought leader, and I find Bhavana a very brave woman, so that I can talk about it a little later. But thank you, Bhavana. Thank you very much.
Shantanu, we were, one of the things that we feel that there is a lot of pressure on HR thought leaders about concepts like diversity, equity, and inclusion at the workplace. Of course, it can be defined in many ways. One of the most pursued aspects of diversity has been gender diversity. And the idea has been that how is it that we can get women leaders to help shape organizations that are successful? We find a lot of investment is done to bring women into the workforce. However, it seems to be a leaky pipeline to the C-suite. What have been your observations?
Yeah, in my 28 years, I have worked with very strong women leaders, and it's a privilege. And even in so-called conventional areas where men used to dominate, like industrial relations in those days of 96 to 90, those early, late 90s, where I have worked with women leaders who were strong in so-called men domain, in courts in IR too. So it's a privilege, and I still respect them, and I still have a lot that I owe to them for my own learning and for my own experience and where I am today.
Yes.
I just want to share a little genesis of as to before I respond to this my experiences. You see, for me, diversity is not a Western fad. It is not something to where I can do a little of these and put it in the social media.
Mm.
Diversity, for me, in my experience, actually helps business.
Mm.
Fundamentally, it is to be viewed as how does it generate or how does it make business sense. I think that is where the organizations which have been able to get that linkage is essentially where I feel diversity has really worked and helped for the business, because that is the genesis. And let me articulate it a little more. Today, if you the whole concept of diversity, in my view, is essentially its gender is of course specific to your question, but overall, in the boardroom, when you have diverse thinking and diverse views, that, in my view, will bring diversity to the business itself. And while this is not a cliche, I have actually seen it happening in real terms. There are organizations where the product is, it is so centric to, let's say, women. It is important to have women as brand managers marketing those products. So first is get the business, uh, the business, the fact that it generates and helps business and business growth is an established fact. I mean, there is no non-empirical fact on this. It's absolutely empirical. Now, if I talk about, let's say, uh, some statistics, 40% of the pool is women,
Mm.
and the leaky that you're referring to, pipeline, let's say about one third of leadership is on women. So it's, in my view, it's really inadequate. It's not about my company. It's about in general these statistics
That's
are.
true.
And the the reason being, in my view, is not because uh, I think organizations over the years have evolved. And to be fair with you, to be fair with this, on this, there is an absolutely free and unbiased interviews or assessments when it comes to someone coming on merit. The reason where this topic becomes very important, and the introduction, is that even if you have women to join an organization, now the kind of support that they may require in order for them to build the career in a long and a sustainable manner is where the whole question has to be uh, responded to. Because it is not about, if you go to the B schools, if you go to engineering, there's a lot of bright young women talent. They join also the organizations. It's not that they don't join, it's they do join. But as they grow up the ladder, it's the support that is required for them to make it and sustain it for long is essentially where I believe there's a lot to do uh, in the Indian corporate, and that is where I pause. But having said that, one good piece that I see is that the the talent scape has significantly changed
Mm.
to encourage and to bring in diversity, and if specifically gender diversity. So that is a real good change over the last few, if you ask me, last maybe decade actually, or a little more. It's not that long. I mean, this is my personal view. But now, how do you make the next level? Is how do you bring the sustainability of women to make careers for long? And that is where this topic and the idea of caregiver, or this whole concept, uh, in my view, will change the scenario dramatically and to the better in the future years if all of us understand and have a cognizance that how important that is. Bhavana. That is my 2 cents.
You- Yeah, there is a stereotype around who a caregiver is and who a family caregiver is. It is usually assumed to be a woman. It is usually assumed that women in their middle age, might be more likely to have caregiving responsibilities. But we see that the demographics are changing. Now we have not just parents, we have grandparents. Sometimes families are so small. You might have uncles and aunts, and you might have cousins who are living in another country. So the number of people that one has to care for is much greater than the number of people who can care or who can be caregivers. So, there are two things that I'd like to hear your point of view about. What is the support system that such individuals who have caregiving responsibilities might need? So, can you share with us some of your experiences in which, let's say, you might have had some colleagues come and say, you know, I cannot continue because I have certain responsibilities, but they may not have shared with you that they have caregiving responsibilities. Or if there are, support that an organization might just not have to offer currently.
No, true, true. So it's a very common scenario. It's applicable for our own families as well. But
Hmm.
you know, at the end of the day, there are two aspects to it in my view, Bhavna. One is what does an individual do
Hmm.
towards this aspect of managing the household in terms of the entirety that you're referring to, so that I can focus on my career. What does
Right.
an individual do? And how does an organization support the individual? So
Yeah.
these go parallel.
Right.
I think the I'll be very candid about it. See, it's what's happening is that as on today,
Hmm.
uh, the concept of caregiver, if at
Hmm.
all, restricts to a strata of society, and that is where I'd
Hmm.
say candid is because of the affordability to keep a support system at house.
Yes.
So, which in my view is a minor section.
Right.
The majority is essentially where the affordability may not
Hmm.
be existing.
Yeah.
Look at that kind of support. But here is the larger picture, Bhavna, and that is where I feel uh, it's a question of time, and this
Hmm.
concept will become a household concept in the corporate world. It's just a question of time. And I was, before this session, I was going through the portals, and I was noticing that the jobs for caregivers in the portals, the job ads are going up. I
Hmm.
don't have to figures. You all can people. I mean, you can see it yourself if you just whether it's these portals, job portals. Now,
Hmm.
so some kind of there is some kind of traction happening on this
Hmm.
because people are getting educated. People are
Hmm.
spending enormous money to get themselves educated with the intent
Hmm.
and the premise to do a career and a long career.
Right.
If you're in a short-term career within 2 years, you don't need all of this. But you want to build a 20, 25 years career and you want to go to that CXO level or a leadership level, and you want to build that career. Now, I think the transition that is required, in my view, is
Right.
from an individual to get from an individual or a family to get the support to corporate supporting an individual to support
Yeah.
is actually the journey that probably the Indian corporate or India Inc. has to go through, and there is where the the original genesis lie. That why do we do what we do, right? It is
Hmm.
important for organizations to do this because eventually there's a linkage to the organizations also doing well, and
That's
and
right.
and that journey is from an individual to a corporate supporting an individual is definitely going to happen in the coming years. This is my stated belief and this is my optimism. But yes, one thing I want to share with you, if you are asking me for my experience, I have seen a lot of women leaders like you who have really grown well and done well. And one common premise for all of these leaders is they had a solid support system at the house front.
Mm.
That is common. That I have worked with all of them. I know them personally. Some of them are family friends. They have solid support system. But the problem is that there are equal number of talented leaders
Mm.
could not make it to the end or could not
Mm.
make it long. Is because primarily not because they were not good, they were actually brilliant, is because they did not have the support system.
Right.
And that is where I think it's a journey that organizations will go through and take. And if you allow me, see, it's like this, uh, every organization has a corporate social responsibility, so-called CSR,
Mm.
as a
Mm.
mandate. Not because the government has mandated it, it's because much before government mandated it, I have seen it companies doing it on their own.
That's right.
And it's my own personal view is that this concept itself is a big domain of CSR actually. This is
Mm.
also in its true sense a corporate social responsibility.
That's right.
And it's a question of, trust me, in my own belief, the way organizations are evolving, the way there's a war for talent. If I have to retain the best of talent, whether it is agnostic to gender, these are the next level that organizations will start thinking, in my view. And that is my optimism, because I may not have too long a career to go, but I'm sure I'll see it during my tenure also, that these are the changes that will happen to the corporate.
A typical career might go up to maybe 58, 60, or whatever these days, but we are living so much longer. So careers are going to go on for a very long time, and they're going to change shape. And as they change shape, and as you continue to contribute in so many other ways, I'm going to take a couple of your ideas that you suggested. The first one being the idea of CSR and the organization's corporate's responsibility towards society, or looking at some things that can be done beyond the organization culture per se, but to say that what is it that we can invest in, because this investment is going to unlock talent for us. For example, how can organizations invest in the care economy so that women can build the support system that they need? The earlier the support system could be your extended family. These days the families are so small. We need paid infrastructure, and that doesn't exist. So we need a care economy. I'm keen to understand from you, in your experience, how have organizations looked at hiring differently, if they have looked at hiring for skills or competencies, and have organizations even looked at the pool of people that might be caregivers?
No, so there are two, three points to it before I give you a specific response. See, one is that uh, hiring. See, okay, before I come to that, see, there was a time, Bhavna, when you and me started our career, the concept of insurance as a hospitalization insurance, a medical
Yeah,
insurance, was not that common when we had joined,
that's right.
right? Or for that matter, executive health checkup, which is annual
Right.
health checkup. Not that when we joined, when we started our career, I don't think it was that in vogue.
Yeah.
Today, it is a given,
Mm.
absolutely given, right? It's a given fact that companies have health checkups, companies have insurance policies, companies have gym facilities. So
Yeah.
the concept of well-being,
Yeah.
which is essentially what it was and what it is now, essentially the areas that I just talked about. The concept of well-being will also now include this part.
Mm.
And the point that I'm trying to drive and why I'm saying is because if you want to retain the talent,
Mm.
then it is a question of time when this additional support, or when this support would be required for the talent to actually do the business, to contribute to the business. So
Okay.
if the needle has moved towards insurance, medical insurance, I remember the struggle we used to go, when we started, and now it's a given. It's like, it's not because of COVID. It's actually much before COVID. It's given
That's
that
right.
all these are there. This also will be there. Why I'm telling you that, suppose today you hire the best of talent, and as I said, that I am very happy to see the progress in the India Inc. At least that, the lot of female talent pool which is coming on board. The problem is the retention of the talent, right?
That's right.
Now, if an organization believes that someone has to be retained, and it is there is a possibility of retaining, because if I can provide a formal professional support to
Yeah.
manage the rest, beyond at home, then this kind of conviction is what will lead well-being. Today's definition of well-being is a question of time will add this element, is the point I'm trying to make, because it will make business sense for any business to get into this.
Give me a sense of what you think are some of the best practices or initiatives around employee well-being that are currently, organizations are investing in.
The I've just covered, but let me today, the focus on health
Hmm.
and post COVID,
Hmm.
for any company, focus on
Hmm.
employee and employee family health is paramount.
Right.
It's really heartening to see the focus on this part.
Right.
And to my mind, the well-being is just not about physical well-being like the way we are talking about. If I My view is that it's a mental, is a physical, is a holistic well-being, which means
Right.
the 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 mental well-being, the social well-being, the physical well-being all together. So
Right.
there are a lot of practices which are coming even on the mental well-being as a good practice, because uh, for example, there are organizations where you have uh, counseling sessions uh, which you are helping employees to stay connected and on
Yes.
their mental state, which in my view is a good practice, and I think it is slowly shaping shape across organizations. So it is just not a physical piece. And just one point is that for me, a well-being is also about your ability to work in an environment which does not give you stress, or which does not give you, which gives you, which is on the other side of work, which is essentially, where the culture is
Hmm.
essentially a communal environment for you to work, where
Hmm.
you are empowered, where you're free to talk, where you're free to converse, where you're free
Hmm.
to, express your views, you express your opinions. For me, those are also very, very important elements of a mental well-being,
Hmm.
because those are not addressed. There's the
Hmm.
trauma and the stress that creates. So I think there's a lot of good work that has happened by organizations, not only on the physical well-being but also on the mental well-being.
Right.
The area to now next go is the social well-being, which is
Right.
essentially where this area will have to get covered.
Hmm. What do
So
you mean by social well-being?
see, the social well-being essentially is where I go beyond the workspace,
Hmm.
essentially where I'm talking of, mental state, a good state, a happy state,
Hmm.
fun work, etc. Now the social side, and
Hmm.
maybe I'm falling short on a word, that's why I'm using the word social, is what will it do to help an employee to build a career or to work better? Is there a need to look at beyond
Hmm.
work? Could be
Hmm.
immediate level, could be family.
Right.
And that is where probably, and not probably, actually my conviction is that this whole concept of care, the whole concept of care economy, the whole concept of caregiver, this will my own optimism is that it will take a huge shape in the corporate. It's just that, you know, someone has to take the lead. Is I think that is the best way to. Some company will probably lead the show, or some company will get into this, and then it will get into shape. And that is a my own confidence is that it will be the next level of well-being.
So, if you were to visualize or imagine the futuristic support that you would like to give to your employees, what would that look like? So, for example, let's say you were to do the blue sky thinking and say, here is what I expect. Like, for example, you spoke about counseling in for as employee assistance, and we've seen there is a steady adoption of that service. It has taken some time, but it will get better over time. It requires that investment, right, before things become normal, or things become acceptable, that counseling is okay, I can go take that support, I will not be stigmatized, I will be not be judged, etc. Similarly, if you were to imagine who would be a good partner for the head of HR at Zydus to support employees' social well-being,
Yeah, so my response will not necessarily be Zydus, but my response is that
any organization.
yes, in any see the I just want to get to that point again, that how do you retain the talent that you want to retain?
Right.
It is not you get if you give a salary,
Yeah,
there are companies who can give you probably more or equal,
that's right.
right? So salaries has never been in my view, has never been the factor. I think
True.
both of us have understood that in our careers as well.
Yes.
Then talent, I am what I am, or I am where I am because of my skill or my competency,
Yes.
right? Then the culture, if it is taken care of, where you are empowered enough, where you are, where the role is interesting to you, and you're making a good career in terms of your status as a good potential. Yet why that person may leave.
Yeah.
Now, if the in order to get, if you're talking of HR, the partner for HR is today, if you ask me, it is not about engagement of employees.
Hmm.
Engagement of employees is a means to finally ensure that the talent that I need gets retained,
That's right.
right? The partner to HR would be any support
Hmm.
in any form from anyone to
Hmm.
retain talent that I want. And
Hmm.
here is that point that I'm referring to. When
Yes.
you exhaust all the forms of retaining, then somewhere
Hmm.
fundamentally, I think that is where you started. Is a
Hmm.
way that people may not be able to sustain or go into long careers, and unfortunately, it is the brunt is faced by women in
Hmm.
especially in the Indian context. Then the way to make that happen, retaining that talent for the business to take, to gain from that talent, is essentially these elements that are beyond the workspace, that are beyond the space of physical safety and physical security. These are all given now. These all stories are, concluded. It's that part is where the next level or evolution is, if you ask me. That is the way in which probably the organizations, because fact of the matter is, I just want to make one more point. See, the fact of the matter is that the retention of talent, talent attraction is not a big point for a well established company.
Right.
It is the retention of talent. And if I have to be more specific to today's topic, it is a retention of the female talent, or
Yeah.
the gender diversity that we refer to.
Yeah.
That is fundamentally, if you ask me, I think most of the companies probably would have got exhausted by now with whatever we are doing in the workspace or in the role or in salary or whatever.
That's
Yet
right.
we are leaving. So then that is the place where the next
Yeah.
evolution is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to understand what might be those reasons that we today don't understand. One of my favorite things is to say that many times we do these exit interviews, and when we do the exit interviews, a large number of women specifically might quote personal reasons, and you leave it at that, right? If it's a personal reason, you just say, okay, it's a personal reason. But if you scratch that surface, you will realize that the personal reasons will fall under different forms of caregiving. It's either getting married, or it is having a child, or it is caring for older adults, or it is some special requirements at home,
True.
or it is becoming a trailing spouse. So, caregiving of some kind impacts women differentially, and therefore retention. Those are great points, Shantanu. What I would like for you to throw light on is what kind of work culture. So you spoke about culture that person feels comfortable to speak, to express themselves, to feel valued, to feel recognized, etc., to have a certain quality of engagement. What do you think needs to change in terms of managerial capability or work culture so that women can share their caregiving challenges?
I'll a little um, brass tacks, if you ask me. There are a lot of these surveys that many organizations do on many of
Hmm.
these questions that you're asking.
Hmm.
First and foremost, as a culture, when you do a survey and when you ask these views and opinions about what can I do and how can I retain
Hmm.
you or how can I do,
Hmm.
first and foremost, please, for any organization, respect the view and do something. That's the basic.
That's right.
I see uh, at times is a miss, that we do these fancy surveys and then we don't do take action anyway. And this is not something, this is a general statement I make across my all these years. But having said that, it is again little there are little layers to the response. Uh, the manager or leader, if we have to support you, one is the culture, that indicators that we talked about, in terms of role, in terms of openness, in terms of transparency, in terms of communication, in terms of all the facets of the leadership or the management that we require. Fundamentally, where people get stuck in reality is that, suppose today some of the points that you mentioned, that you there are such serious issues at home which are such unavoidable,
Hmm.
then what do you do? Then we may say that, okay, you may go for remote working, which is,
Yes.
by the way, you and me, most of our careers, we have not done any remote working, by the way. So that's a different point.
Yeah.
But, you know, remote working.
Hmm.
But I've realized that even those practices at
Hmm.
times does not help you.
Hmm.
Why I'm saying, even if you want to do remote working,
Hmm.
your environment at home, the point that you're referring to, the support system, will not enable you to do your productivity.
Hmm.
And
Totally.
I have seen many during COVID days or just after COVID, the women for workforce, they wanted to get back to an office environment because they were not able to work at the home front in the
Hmm.
way they would have been because of lot of personal factors which are
Hmm.
absolutely genuine.
Hmm.
If you So again, it boils down to that, that if we corporatize, or if we make it a cadence, just like medical checkups or just like executive health checkups, or just like medical insurance, hospitalization insurance, if we can bring a cadence around support system, which is the so-called social well-being or whatever, if there's a better word, please use it. That would actually be where this whole, whether it's a managerial support or leadership support, that is where actually the story may get a more complete with an intent to make people stay in the organization and progress. So I don't know whether I've been able to articulate my view, but this is where my thinking is.
So I'm going to say that, okay, any of these support systems, let's say there is an organization that provides support, all kinds of support, or maybe one kind of support, or another organization. So there are multiple organizations that offer different kinds of support, which is the social systemic support to somebody who might have caregiving responsibilities. Um, how can we make a compelling business case to CFOs and CEOs that this is an investment worth making?
Yeah. Any, it's, you know, it's a, it's is the, there was a long time back in Tata Steel, there were the head HR during that time had written two books: the social side of Tata Steel, the human side of Tata Steel.
Interesting.
You know, and both are very very different actually. And these books were written decades back. You know, when we were
Right.
growing up that time, they had written that time the HR had written these two
Yeah.
books: the social side of Tata Steel and the human side of Tata Steel. Now the
Right.
point is, the the business case, this is my own view, cannot just mainly be the human side.
Right.
Moment the business case goes beyond the realms of only human side and gets into the social side of an
Hmm.
individual, and which is social, when I say, for the definition of this discussion, is beyond office. At
Hmm.
least let's look at the family support.
Hmm.
Moment that gets linked to someone's ability, the critical talent or a talent to stay in the organization and build a long career, to contribute to
Hmm.
the business, especially for the gender diversity piece, or this thing. I think that will be the compelling business case in my view. Because
Hmm.
one is the concept is nascent, but the concept is not, it may be nascent because not much of advocacy may have happened, barring people like you who are really, I called you brave because you are championing certain causes which are, if not today, it's somewhere tomorrow or somewhere in the coming days, it will become the point to reckon with. But I think this piece, compelling business case, is only when it is just not restricted to the human side. It
Let's
is.
step into the, yeah, absolutely, let's step into the shoes of a CEO or a CFO and say that they might have certain considerations of return on my investment. Am I getting results? Is this an efficient enough investment that I should be making? How long should that investment be? Will I get the necessary returns? Those could be some of the questions that can bother heads of organizations. What do you
True.
think we should say to them?
No, no, see, it's like this. Today, let me go a little more on this. See, for example, today, whether it is hospitalization or whether it is checkups or jail, no one questions, right? That's also an investment, by the way.
That's
And,
right.
right, there are good practices like sponsoring education for employees. Right?
Yes.
Why do we do it? Is because we sponsor that for a person incumbent to grow himself or herself with that kind of education for the organization to also benefit along with the
Yes.
individual benefiting.
Yes.
If you think deep, how is this different? Essentially, it's a part of the same kind of thinking that makes an education policy
Yeah.
or that makes the medical policies. It is, in my view, an extension of the same. Now, whether
Beautiful.
The nitty-gritties of duration and what kind of policy will it be or what kind of riders will it be, those are in my view easier things to solve.
That's right.
Fundamentally, philosophically, is it important for some talent or the talent that we want to retain to be retained? If that answer is yes,
Hmm.
the rest of the things will fall in place. The problem lies, if I, as I said, that if you view these practices as the human side, which
Hmm.
is which is fine, which is the true thing, but there is the element of business gaining by absolute gain, actually, by actually able, is this a tool to retain our talent? Moment
Hmm.
that itself is compelling enough in my view.
Yeah. No, I think that's well put. I think if we can make, we can connect the dots for business leaders to see that how these initiatives add up to retaining talent or add up to improving business outcomes, then I think it becomes a lot easier, and everybody is on the same page as far as this is concerned. Increasingly, both men and women will have caregiving responsibilities. Today it feels like as if women are impacted more, but increasingly we know that it will be either men or women, and or a trans population as and when that population increases in our workforce. Now, what I'd like for you to help us navigate a little bit, Shantanu, in your experience is, can you share with us some stories or some anecdotes of what has, what may have impacted you about women and their responsibilities around caregiving, or men and their responsibilities around caregiving, uh, that either you know were never spoken about in the workplace or got to light very late, or something like that.
Yeah, sure. No, I can mention one point that, let's say, one of the biggest caregiving support that organizations, most of the organizations have done well is crash.
Yes.
It's outstanding.
Yes.
It's I have uh, my leaders or my managers who were ladies and who were also growing in there and who were in their family way and all of them.
Yes.
They had this huge support in
Yes.
a absolutely brilliant CREST facility, which actually helped them.
Yes.
So the point is, moment it comes to workspace and within workspace, it gets very easily justified and people implement.
Hmm.
Well, let's say that this crash is an excellent example of the whole concept of caregiving, right? But
Hmm.
it's a brilliant support system that
Hmm.
most of the well-established companies have mastered it. Actually, it's not because
Yeah.
of a mandatory requirement; it's because companies generally feel about it.
Yes.
Now, some of the examples that where I feel, as in my last 28 years, that I have seen that where it has been a little helpless state is when brilliant careers, especially of women,
Hmm.
got stalled because they got married and they had to shift to some other uh, city because their husband was located there, right? Now, there is absolutely nothing right or wrong. That's the way the society is, or that's the way. But the good part is that it's a pleasure to share this anecdote that in Zydus Wellness, especially and now we are looking at where the head office is in Ahmedabad. The good part is that I see many women very independently making their careers, and they have found a nucleus or they have found a way to manage the balance the family,
Hmm.
which the family may or may not stay,
Hmm.
but it's just not the women, by the way, it's also the men
Hmm.
who are able to manage this balance. And it's a very heartening example to share. And there are a lot of these examples that are really worth, where it talks of weekend travels, where you're talking of a way to manage the children, the way to manage the family despite staying in two cities. So this is something which I am noticing in the last 2 3 years, and
Hmm.
it's really a good place to be in. There are, to your point, that by the time it came to us and we thought it's too late and we couldn't retain, finally it's the ability to retain. That's the fundamental premise I want to park in this session, is especially when the the domestic front was so compelling in terms of the complexities,
Hmm.
that the affordability of the person or the incumbent to sustain that kind of support or a professional support
Hmm.
got so missed out that the person said that, hey, enough here, let me first just handle that. Let me take a break, let me handle that. But unfortunately, what happens is that in my experience, I've seen, whether it's my friends, my colleagues, or elsewhere, that the breaks were so long that then it did not come back for them to get back to that track. And then finally, they eventually, got into some alternate options, or alternate, which was never an option. It was just like so. So the point I'm making is there is a good positive side, that the talent landscape is changing and the women are empowered and independently staying and making their careers. But but at the end of the day, we have to factor this point of uh, support to make it sustainable, to make it to make that so robust that as if it is taken care of. And that is where probably pioneers like you will probably be the leaders of tomorrow to get this act right.
What's your view about sabbaticals for caregiving?
So now there are a lot of, I hear a lot of fancy stories. Some people going to Himalayas, or some people going to then coming and writing books which became bestsellers, etc. So those are one side of sabbatical. I honestly I have not been able to relate to it, but probably I'm sure there are people who have done. There are some genuine cases of sabbaticals where people have wanted to pursue education,
Hmm.
and those I believe are really genuine.
Hmm.
And they have pursued education. They have gone and done their PhDs, or they have master, done whatever their course, and they've come back. That's uh, that's also not in the realms of caregiving, or
Yes.
the The point is, there are many women force who go into sabbaticals to manage the domestic front.
Yes.
Unfortunately, many of them I have not seen them coming back.
Right.
That is where we have lost the India Inc. In the Indian corporate. It is not, I'm talking in general, have lost a lot of talent who have
Yes.
contributed to the business. That sabbatical is, I'll come back, and it didn't happen.
So,
They
what can
couldn't.
organizations do to get women who go for sabbaticals on account of caregiving, get them to come back?
Yeah, so there are a lot of these uh, scope extended to many of these, to the women who are going to do part time, or to get back into the group, maybe part time or as a consultant or on off role. Uh, there is uh, I think the progress is there. It's not that the progress is not there, but overall, there's a way to go in my view. See, I think moment I do it for the purpose of social media, then it is, even if you do little, you can exemplify, and then it looks big. But I think overall there is a long way to go for the Indian corporate on these changes that you just talked about. But more important is, at organizations, whatever practices we do, any organization, make it sustainable,
Yeah.
make it make it long term. if we do not make systems which are sustainable or long term, it will be in its absolute sense uh, n- such a limited scope it will have that it will die its own death. So that's where, in order to make it long term and sustainable, I think the journey may have started, but I don't think we have progressed that much
One
in
last
the.
question, Shantanu. We both have girls, we have nieces, and they are going to join the workforce. And we really wish that they would become CXOs and CEOs in their own right in their time, and that they will face a very different workplace that you and I endured, right? What is your wish that our daughters encounter? What kind of workplaces as they pursue their path to becoming CEOs of the future?
My only take is that whether it's your kid or my kid, the daughters of today's generation or who are going to be the future, the true essence of equity comes in here, not equality, equity. If an organization recognizes the that your pedestal for whatever societal reasons needs a bigger pedestal and me needs a smaller pedestal for us to be equal, I only wish that the equity front is taken care of. And I can go on this topic, but I think the word equity is one of the most non-understood word in this in the corporate. I often get surprised when people equate equity and equality, which is a the future for women in the corporate is when the organizations get the act of equity right, and that's all I can wish for you, your kid, and my kid.
And what would you tell the young HR professionals that what should they do to ensure equity in the workplace?
First is acknowledge the issue. If you don't acknowledge the issue, is like doctor not understanding the symptom. First
Yes,
understand the symptom, then only you can act. B is that here is a message for the HR fraternity also, that all the budding talent, that please make your careers, but also, as your question is only for the HR, I mean, one, help others make careers too.
right.
That is the very essence of being a HR professional or HR leader, right?
Yes,
And when you answer that question, how do I help others make career, just like I want to make my career,
right.
most of the issues may get sorted out by that. That's
Great.
my.
Great point, and I think that is truly the essence of saying that how do we build sustainable organizations. One of the ways in which Shantanu helped us see that we build sustainable, fit for the future organizations is if organizations can have HR professionals who are invested in building careers not just for themselves but for others, if women have opportunities for equity, and if we can recognize that while we have come a long way, we still have many more things to do. We need to recognize the fact that employees are going to be caregivers and workplaces need to be caregiver friendly, because that is what enables equity for women who disproportionately carry the load of caregiving in our homes. And Shantanu also adequately helped us understand that what we do in terms of building a business case is about not just recognizing the individual or the human, but the fact that there is a social component, and that social component will enable us to have talent for the future on a sustainable basis. That is how we build future fit corporates. that invest in people and are able to nurture success. I am so grateful for this conversation, Shantanu. Thank you.
Same here. All the very best, Bhavana. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.